Hello and welcome to the Pregame Network News Hole, a series where we recap a few things we heard throughout the week. Not necessarily everything and all the big news you'd expect, but a few things we heard and thought were interesting. This episode is for the week of August 14th, 2022. Let's get started. Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man hit PCs after being exclusive to PlayStation consoles since 2018, and like any high-profile PC release, mods began to roll in. While many were content with adding to the plethora of existing spider suits or adding some quality of life changes, one user saw fit to replace all the pride flags in the game with American flags, and it went over about as well as you'd expect. The mod was uploaded to Nexus Mods, everybody's former favorite modding hub, and after an expected response, the mod was quickly taken down, before being spread to other modding sites where the same thing happened a few times. Ironically, and predictably, the removal and outrage led to its presence becoming widespread, but with a surprising amount of support for it. What followed was a multitude of re-uploads by other accounts to sites where it had already been banned, before finally coming to rest on file-sharing sites that lack heavy-handed moderation. Nexus Mods moderators would later address what they called silly drama in a post where they claimed the only reason they banned the user responsible was because they uploaded the mod via a sock puppet account, though that does little to explain why further uploads were also banned, or why moderators on other sites also took similar action. They spent the remaining paragraphs in the post simultaneously claiming to not be an authority on how people can mod their games, while also explaining they took, and would continue to take, actions that would make them an authority on how people can mod their games wherever they had the power and opportunity to do so. They followed it up by reminding everyone that bigotry is bad, and ended the post saying that any user upset with this courageous stance should delete their account. It's unclear if this reaffirmation of morals will usher in a new wave of stances against political, ideological, and other extreme modifications in the modding community. Who knows, maybe the countless trans rights texture modifications that tend to crop up are next. Maybe at minimum they'll have a similar stance on mods that replace all American flags in the game with pride flags. Probably not. More important than all this, however, is that the entire mess has gotten in the way of real urgent modding inquiries, like whether or not somebody will take the opportunity to fix this game's awful version of Black Cat. In further confirmation of the casualization of competitive scenes in all genres and the cancerous nature of a meta mindset, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate communities have begun banning Minecraft Steve from tournament play, after an upset led to a top player being eliminated without even reaching top 8, as well as a different Steve player taking home a win at another large tournament. Some may remember this whole thing started anew during a Grand Finals tournament match a few months back, where an opposing Fox player was so stunned by the fact that Steve could place blocks that he froze up and began jumping in place, attacking at random, seemingly completely unaware of any possible solutions to this conundrum, before walking forward and taking an L. Since the first banning, murmurs and rumblings of the ban extending to more regions and even calls to ban Tekken's Kazuya have begun to come from throughout the community, which, like many others, have adopted a follow-the-leader mentality on what balancing they want and what complaints they have. At the same time, these same players have been trying to force themselves to play Steve to minimal success. Turns out you need to actually like how a character plays and be a fit for that style for you to get results. It remains to be seen what opinion the gods on high will foist upon their plebeians. We could be just a few temper tantrums away from new universal character bans in the Smash Bros. Competitive scene. Something that really hasn't happened since Kirby's Meta Knight and Super Smash Bros. Brawl, with similar complaints that happened in the 14 years between the two games never taking off or having the opportunity to do so in any universal capacity. The Overwatch League took another hit in the middle of the week after big-name sponsors Coca-Cola and State Farm released statements alluding to them dropping support. Coke stating that they were taking a step back for the moment, while State Farm was a bit more direct, with a spokesman saying they were reevaluating the limited marketing relationship with the Overwatch League. These statements follow the league losing T-Mobile a week prior, and while this may have more to do with the current scandals and status of Activision Blizzard as a whole, it's worth noting that the league is experiencing the worst average viewership in its history, and already owed its parent company millions of dollars, something that was addressed in the latest meeting between the league team leaders and CEO Bobby Kotick, the first meeting since Microsoft's potential acquisition of the company was announced. The results of the meeting were not optimistic, as teams began to cut down on expenses, with many players being traded off or outright cut from teams. And while there has always been a certain level of disorganization within the league, things peaked when one player found out he was being released from his team when he saw the announcement tweet with everybody else. None of this should come as a surprise to anyone who has ever watched the league, or that has seen the effects of inflating an esports scene with corporate backing before having a proper competitive history and player base. Put simply, it was doomed from the start, the whole thing riding on Blizzard's money and the reputation of the game, which has been declining since its release. And what little natural foundation the game had has eroded away over the years. Plenty of players from the league and creators that had history with the game have moved on, and the people taking their place don't quite have the same stopping power. Both the game and its competitive league have been under constant pressure since its release in 2016, from questionable balancing choices, extremely harsh moderation practices, and the slow talent bleed from the development team. The culmination of these issues causing a consistent drop in popularity and relevancy for the once up-and-coming game and its community, with even some of its earliest tournaments adjusting audience seating and camera angles to hide waning in-person viewership. Time will tell exactly what happens to the league with Overwatch 2 in sight. It's very likely that there will be at least some kind of small resurgence despite some of the questionable changes and lack of real hype behind the new title. But in the meantime, Microsoft has remained silent on what plans, if any, they had for it, with them currently having their own issues with Halo's competitive scene. Hopefully this is not the first of its kind to fall in a similar manner, as potential backers learn that even something as vapid as internet-based celebritism requires a foundation of its own to stand on, and is not enough to carry a multi-million-dollar entity year over year alone. One last small note for the week, ahead of their Call of Duty Next event, Infinity Ward and Activision have announced that Modern Warfare 2's campaign will be playable a week early for all pre-order owners, giving them an opportunity to play it at their own pace instead of rushing to get into multiplayer. And that does it for another week of the Pregame Network News Hole. If you encounter anything you think we'd find interesting throughout the following weeks, send it our way. Thank you for listening, have a great week, we'll see you next time.